Hello, my friends. It's Nick, the ASMR nerd. And guess what time it is? You don't have to guess. You know what time it is. It is mechanical keyboard time. It's been a little while since we looked at a new keyboard on the channel, and we can't have that. Gotta get that click-clack going on. Today we are looking at a new keyboard from Royal Kludge. Royal Kludge, a delightfully named company, one of my favorite names in the biz, known as RK for short. Royal Kludge has garnered quite a reputation for themselves over the years. They've been in the biz for a long time. As a manufacturer of ultra budget but good value keyboards in that sort of around $50 or even sub $50 segment. And I've reviewed a couple of boards from them in past, some years ago. And I came away quite impressed both times with the value proposition. And now it seems like RK is moving up market a little bit, at least with this current crop of keyboards. They still do have those ultra budget offerings as well, but what we're looking at here today is a little bit different. In this box is the Royal Kludge RK96, and as the name suggests, it is a 96% layout keyboard, which is most of a full-size keyboard minus only a handful of keys, but it's becoming an increasingly popular layout amongst enthusiasts and now working its way into the mainstream, and that is what RK is targeting with this board. And it's easy to understand why. It's a very appealing layout. If you want to have a full numpad and not compromise on, nav cluster functionality or F-row keys, but still want a more compact footprint than a traditional 100% full-size board. So the RK96 comes fully loaded with all kinds of desirable features. It comes with triple mode wireless, including 2.4 gigahertz USB connectivity, Bluetooth connectivity, and wired mode connectivity via a USB-C port on the board. This particular colorway is what they call their camp green colorway. It's also available in a beautiful blue colorway and a white and a black version. The blue and the green colorways at least, come with a double shot ABS, I believe, keycaps, so they'll be durable, as well as all the RGB backlighting you've come to expect from keyboards these days. I think they advertise 20 different modes, and hot swappable switches. So by default, this board comes with RK's own yellow switches, which are comparable to Gateron yellows. They come factory lubed, so they should be nice and smooth. They're a light linear switch, 45 gram actuation force. And a few other niceties here too. We get a magnetic wrist rest included with the keyboard, and we get a USB hub with a pair of USB-A ports on the back. All of that, of course, comes at a slightly higher price than what they've targeted in the past. The nominal MSRP is $165 for this colorway. It's a little bit cheaper for the black or the white one. But at the time of recording, it is on sale for, I believe, $123 US, and I believe you can get 10% off if you sign up for their newsletter, and I might even have a discount code for you down in the video description. I'm actually not sure yet, but check it out. Maybe you can save some money there. Either way, it seems like you can probably get this board for around $110. That seems to be the actual going price at the moment. And it has been pretty regularly on sale. I've checked on it a few times. So that's the effective price, we'll say. So without further ado, we should take a look, check this thing out, see if Royal Kludge can bring it in this somewhat more premium, not enthusiast price bracket, but we'll say solidly mainstream price bracket. There are some other enthusiast features here as well. We've got foam dampening, I should say, with EVA foam to control the sound. We have, of course, software configurability. We have a detachable cable, all that good stuff. So it says here, Royal Kludge RK96, RGB, all that stuff. Maybe some more information underneath, but I can't quite see that there. It has an executive standard. Not sure what that means. Got this orange and black aesthetic going on. It certainly stands out. This does look like it could sit on a shelf. It's retail-ish packaging. Although there's not a lot of information about the features of the board. But we do get a stencil, kind of schematic version of the board. Picture on the back. We see that magnetic wrist rest. We see that compact 96% layout. And we get dedicated media controls, including a volume roller and a mute button. So that's always a plus, and actually something you don't see on a whole lot of keyboards these days. On the front, we've got this little RK, I guess, seal of quality. Little holographic sticker. That's pretty much it. Not a whole lot of information to be had on the outside, at least. So let's pop this open. And in case I didn't make it clear already, which I really ought to have made it more clear before, this is a sponsored video. This video is sponsored by Royal Kludge. They sent over 2 of these RK96s in 2 different colorways. So we're unboxing the camp green one here. We will take a look at the blue one after as well. But yeah, they are straight up paying me to show you this keyboard and talk about it. But as always, in these sponsored videos, all the opinions presented are my own, and the final content is not moderated or influenced by RK. But I still like to make it very clear when these videos are sponsored rather than an unsponsored review, for example. So we are greeted with a pretty plain looking interior. We've got here a little bit of cardboard on the upper edge here to provide some padding, but really not much other than that. We've got actually a bit, sort of a tray here, and there's some thickness here, but no foam to speak of. But nonetheless, the keyboard does seem to be intact, seems to have survived shipping without issue. So here's the keyboard with the product guide. We'll put that aside for just a moment so as to check out the other items in the box. Underneath the keyboard, we have the magnetic wrist rest, which appears to just be hard plastic. In this case, it looks like a lightly textured white ABS. Not solid, it's hollow inside, but it feels sturdy enough. Not much flex. You can see on the bottom it's made from two pieces, an upper and a lower piece. The lower piece is screwed in here. We'll have anti-slip feet on each corner. It has a little cutout here to accommodate the lower bezel of the keyboard, which has a cutout for the arrow keys, as you'll see. But yeah, just plain white, slightly textured, pardon me. Beneath that, nothing. But underneath this kind of frame, we do have a few other pack-ins. We have USB cable. Nothing really to write home about there, although, actually, there's something noteworthy here. And that is that on the keyboard end, we have USB Type-C. On the PC end, or device end, we have USB Type-A, but it's removable to give us a C to C connection. That is a nice feature, especially now that we're seeing more universal adoption of USB Type-C on motherboards and whatnot, so laptops especially. The cable, for its part, though, is simply PVC coated white, not fabric sleeved or anything, but looks to be of a good length. It does come with handy dandy hook and loop fastener, so, and of course color matched with the board, which is nice. We get a combination keycap and switch puller, because of course you can take off both the keycaps and the switches on this keyboard. We have the good style of keycap puller, thank goodness, the wire style, which is friendlier to your keycaps, less likely to scratch them. And we have the standard claw style switch puller here. Not branded, doesn't feel especially deluxe, but it'll certainly get the job done. So no complaints there. And finally, we get a handful of replacement switches. These are, of course, RK's yellow switches that I mentioned earlier. They are light linear switches, 45 gram actuation force, looks like clear polycarbonate uppers and opaque white lowers. Not sure what the stem is made of, but it feels not super soft. But the action is smooth, I will give them that. You can clearly tell it's factory lubed. If we listen, nice, quiet, smooth action. Only very, very minimal audible spring ping. You can hear a little bit on the downstroke, but and the bottom out sound, the bottom out's actually pretty deep. That clicky-clackiness is on the rebound. But overall, it's a very pleasant feeling, smooth switch. And certainly not offensive sounding, anyway. We'll see how it sounds in action on the keyboard. And that's everything. That's that. So, a pretty simple package. Not much to see in there, but it certainly gets the job done. All right, so now for the real reason we're here. The keyboard itself comes in this soft plastic baggie. Always enjoy this material. It's got a nice deep crinkle to it. And the keyboard itself comes with a dust cover on top. And of course we get the user manual. Let's see how that looks briefly. So we've got English in here. It shows the wireless switch, the USB hub, USB 2 hub, mind you, the cable and contents, the media functions, battery info, how to switch between Bluetooth and the 2.4 gigahertz wireless mode, and all that good stuff. Backlight control, which of course we'll take a look at later. Custom backlight settings. It looks like backlight is configurable in hardware, but also I believe in software. Multimedia keys, functions for Windows and Mac, and various other special function keys. Pretty straightforward. Also contact info, warranty info. Don't see warranty info on here. Would be nice to know though. Don't see anything specific though. Typically, these kinds of products are warranted for a year. That's pretty normal. I suspect that's the case here too. Alright, so let's lift off the dust cover. And let's check out the board. So this camp green colorway is really nice. We have this deep green, forest green kind of color on the modifiers. We've got white alphas and alphanumerics here with that deep green for the legends. Then we have this like, I don't know, I'm colorblind, but maybe a Tiffany blue kind of color for a few accent keys. And I think it looks really sharp, actually. Aesthetically, makes a really strong first impression. I like that a lot. It's, reserved, but aesthetically appealing. Of course, in terms of layout, we have a standard block of all our regular alphanumerics over here, including our FRO keys, as well as a print screen and delete key up here above the backspace. We've got a little bit of weirdness going on down here to accommodate the arrow keys. So we have a shortened right shift and one U-sized Alt function and control on the right, whereas we have standard 1.25 over on the left. Everything else, though, is standard. Then we have, of course, our dedicated arrow keys, slightly separated here. And then our numpad, which is standard, except for shortened 0, because, again, we have to accommodate those arrow keys. Some full-size keyboards sport 4 additional keys up here. This does not. Instead, we get a volume roller made of aluminum, feels like, and a mute key with satisfying tactility. The volume roller does not click. It's merely a roller, but it does have noticeable, though fairly weak, little detents in it to stop it in increments. Feels nice though. What you might be noticing we are missing is most of our nav cluster. Normally, full-size keyboard would have 3 and 3 sitting here between this section and that section. This is how RK manages to save so much space in the width by doing away with those. However, the functions get spread out onto our numpad and also up here. Like delete is here, but we also have home, page up, and page down on the secondary layer of our numpad. So really, you're not missing out on much. You're missing out on an insert key, a pause key, scroll lock, I guess. But you have pretty much everything you're going to want here, what the average person is going to need in their day-to-day. So you're well equipped. Let's take a tour around the board here. So the bezel is very slim. It's this textured white ABS, same material I think that the wrist rest is made of, and it's just this, 1/16 of an inch kind of thing here, or so, all the way around, because we have this exploded kind of layout with the separated arrow keys. We do have this slight bulge down here. Your mileage may vary on how you feel about that. Personally, I kind of wish it just sat flush, because then you can use it with other wrist rests rather than the included one that has the cutout for it. But I see what they're going for here. They want that separated arrow keys, but they also want to save as much space as possible, not have the thick bezels along here and up here. So that's fair. The case itself is kind of a tray style. You can see that the top here is actually a separate piece than the outer edge of the case. This is just plastic on the top, as is the case. If we look around the edges, we can see we've got some fairly subtle RK branding down here on the bottom right, Royal Kludge. The keyboard itself has a built-in angle to it. It's sort of a slightly wedge-shaped, maybe 3 degrees of inclination there, not much. Around the back, we have nothing along here, but the back left side, we do get our USB 2 hub, useful for plugging in other devices like mice, or you could put a wireless receiver for a mouse here, for example. Or USB drives, although you're not going to get super fast transfer speeds on USB 2. Then the USB 3 is for the board connectivity itself. On the back, we get, happily, a little place for our receiver, which also, happily, is labeled RK. So we're not going to mix it up with something else. Color matched, very nice. It is magnetic in there, which is a nice thing to see. We have our 2 switches for the wireless on-off and the mode select between USB and Bluetooth. We do have flip out feet to increase the angle of typing if you want. It's a 2-stage, although this doesn't really want to pop out. This lowest stage is fine, but this, there we go. That was a little tricky. Will pop out as well with a little bit of effort. They have the anti-slip feet on them, of course, as does each corner on here. And we've got our, sticker with the usual info, serial number, some info about the electrical ratings and such. And that's pretty much that. On the front, once again, let's take a closer look at these keycaps. And where did I put that keycap puller? Here we are. Let's pull off the escape cap and just see. So these are double shot. I thought they might be, but you know what? They might be die sub. For some reason, I thought these were double shot ABS, but seems like die sub is much more likely here. No, they are double shot. Okay. So the double shot means that the keycap is made of two separate pieces of plastic melded together, and the legend on the front here is actually made of that plastic inner piece protruding through. And that means that they will never wear off. They're never going to wear out. They're not going to rub off. The secondary function, secondary legends here, on the other hand, look like they're probably just printed on there. In theory, they could rub off, but they are on, as you can see, the front face of each keycap, where they're really not going to receive any abrasion or like fingertip traffic. So chances of them actually wearing off are negligible. You can see we've got quite a few secondary legends on here to help you identify what that secondary function layer does. Over here, we've got a switch. Well, not every keycap we have a switch, but here we're going to pull it off, and we're going to take a look at what lies beneath. We've already seen and heard these switches in action. Well, maybe not in action, but we took a listen, a close listen. We will hear them in action in just a little bit. But underneath the switch, we have a white PCB, and you can see, yep, you can see sandwiched between the metal top plate, right? Is this metal? Actually, I think it's a plastic top plate. I think that's a plastic top plate. Between the plastic top plate and the PCB, we have some EVA foam to dampen the sound. And evidently underneath the PCB, we have another layer of sound dampening foam. You can see that we have north-facing SMD LEDs and 5-pin support. So these should take pretty much any Cherry MX compatible switch. One more thing to look at here, and that is the stabilizers. I do not know if any attention has been paid to the stabilizers on this keyboard, but we are going to find out. I've said it 1,000 times, I will say it once again, the stabilizers are the key to a nice sounding keyboard, or at least one of the keys. If you have bad stabs, rattly stabs, it's going to make the whole keyboard sound like trash. So more and more these days, we're seeing these more value-oriented manufacturers incorporating factory lubrication, padding, and other kinds of tuning to make those stabs sound nice from the factory. Let's see what RK has done here. Starting with backspace. Okay, so you do have a loud clack on here, so it's not padded. The bottom out is loud and the rebound is loud because, as we heard, that return stroke on these switches does have a fair bit of clack to it. But what I don't hear is any rattle. I don't hear any tick from the wire of the stabilizer or the stems, and it feels nice and smooth. So it's a bit loud, but that's more the characteristics of the board and the switch than it is the stabilizer itself. Enter key. A similar situation. I think what we're hearing there is more to do with the characteristics of the switch and the keycap than it is to do with the stabilizers. I think the stabilizers themselves are actually quite well controlled on there. Left shift. Same situation, sounding very good. We've got, of course, a couple of stabilized keys over here on the numpad. A little bit of just a faintest little tick over there, but very, very minimal. And the enter key, similarly, a very faint tick when I'm pressing the top of it. Listen. But very faint. She's clacky. This is a very clacky keyboard. Not so much on the THOCK, more on the CLACK, which is fine. That's just a preference thing. Some people like a clackier sound. Some people like a thockier sound. But you know what? The stabilizers are actually pretty well done. The hardest one of all to get right, the space bar. Let's hear it. So a little bit of rattle on there, but quite minimal, actually. But it does sound pretty hollow. But that's more to do with just the fact that the keycap is hollow. Not much to speak of in terms of tick and rattle. Very minimal. Very minimal. So actually, the stabilizers are pretty well done on here. I wouldn't say that they're the nicest sounding stabilized keys I've ever heard, but again, that's more to do with choices regarding the keycaps, the switches, and the board itself, rather than the treatment of the stabilizers, as far as I can tell. And if we look closely, you can see, just make out in there, the wire on this side of the stabilizer. There's a bit of lube in there. It's not a lot, but clearly it's enough. So these are standard plate-mounted stabilizers, and you could very easily pull them out, lube them yourself, wholly mod them, pad them if you wanted to quiet things down. And that's something I might do personally, just because I like a little less clack in my stabs, but my stabilized keys. But all that taken into account, it sounds pretty decent. They sound pretty good. RK has clearly spent some time and attention on those stabs. Speaking of time and attention, it's time to spend some time and attention on the backlight of this board. That's what we're going to look at next. Look at the wireless functions, the backlight, secondary function layer, and then of course we will get to the full-on sound test, which I know you're all eager to hear. But first, let's take a look at this thing in some mood lighting. Alrighty, so here we have the RK96 plugged in, lights are on. I actually meant to show you before we came to this segment the wrist rest and the way it attaches, but I guess I can show you here. I know it's a little dark, but I think you can see it. It's magnetic, so it just kind of, when you get close, it goes ta-da. It just kind of snaps into place. Again, we have this cutout by the arrow keys to make sure it fits nicely. It's got a fair slope to it, but it does the trick. And that's that. Very simple. So, the backlighting. We'll start off with the backlighting. So you are probably seeing a bit of flicker on your end, and that is perfectly normal. That is not visible in person. The flicker is just an artifact of the frequency of the LEDs and the shutter speed of the camera. Most keyboards exhibit it on camera. However, if you are going to be featuring this camera in a streaming setup and it's going to be in frame with your camera, it might be a consideration for you. This keyboard does flicker. It was a little tricky to try and minimize it on my camera, but not visible in person. The light, for its part, is pretty nice. It's got some vivid color. The gradients look smooth. It's not the brightest backlight I've ever seen. It's adequate, I would say. It's not going to win any awards for brightness, but it's bright enough to see in a well-lit room, and that's usually my litmus test for if it's bright enough. We, of course, have some brightness settings. It is on the maximum brightness right now, but we can go function and down in a few different steps. You can notice when we hit the bottom, LED up here flashes. There we are, back at the top. Looks like maybe 4 or 5 brightness steps. This is also where we change the speed, left and right on the arrow keys. So we can slow this effect way down if we want. I actually prefer it that way. I should keep it like that. I like the slow effects. Or we can speed it right up. That's as fast as it gets, which is actually not that fast. So I don't know if you want your keyboard going crazy. Maybe this isn't it for you, but I like the slower effects like this. Looks like there's, again, maybe 4 or 5 speed settings as well. So, of course, we have many different options for the backlight, about 20, I think they said. So we can go function, print screen, and we can cycle through a bunch of them. Here's a sine wave. Oh, never mind, not a sine wave. This is a reactive mode. Here's a slowly scrolling pinwheel type mode. We can speed it up a little bit just to demonstrate the effects better for you. There's the sine wave. Do the worm. There's a scrolling vertical rainbow. And on any of these settings, I believe, I'm just trying to remember what the key combination is. There's a way to change the color, and now I've forgotten it. But just like many other RGB keyboards we've seen on this channel, you can use the rainbow option, or you can cycle through a variety of preset colors as well. Raindrops type mode. Ripples. I like that mode. It's one of my favorite types. That's a interesting one. Don't know if I've seen that before. Spiraling inward. They kind of swirl in from the outside and then shoot out. Okay, back and forth across the board. Kind of shooting lines back and forth. Interesting. Kind of a wave that sweeps and bounces. Probably a custom light mode. It's kind of funky. I like that. Don't even know how to describe it. Kind of shimmering mode. Looks like a fixed rainbow. Classic breathing mode, of course. Here's a mode cycling through solid colors. And another reactive mode. And another reactive mode. And there we are, back to the first effect. I didn't actually keep track of those, but it was, yeah, somewhere more than a dozen probably, maybe up to 20. I would say the standard complement is what we see here, plus some extras, some fun ones. I don't know if anyone actually uses those crazy ones. Do you? Does anyone ever? I don't know. If I have RGB on, I usually just set it to something nice and chill like this, or like the ripple, you know. In fact, let's switch up to the ripple. It's nice. It's relaxing. It's very ASMR. Okay, so that's the backlighting situation. There is, however, one other mode where we can do per key backlighting in hardware here. Function, hold on, backspace, I believe. Doesn't seem to be doing it. Maybe we have to be on the specific mode. I'll mess around with it anyway, and I'll let you guys know if I have issues getting it working, but I read it in the manual. There is evidently a way to do it. Shouldn't be too too tricky. We've seen this feature on other keyboards as well, but it is nice. I actually really like it when you can do the perky backlighting control in hardware without needing this software. It's a little bit finicky, tedious, because you have to press each key that you want the number of times to get the color you want, but it's there anyway. I say I like to see it in hardware because the software for this, it is available. It is on the RK website. You can download it if you're getting the special edition RK96, which is one of the forest blue or the camp green. We see the camp green here. I will show you the forest blue at the towards the end of the review here. But make sure you get the version of the software for the special edition RK96. There's also a version of the software for the standard edition. So make sure you get the appropriate one. But again, you can get them from the RK website. And the software is functional. I'm not going to be showing it to you in this video because it's just really boring and honestly kind of tedious to record. So, but I did try it out. I will say it works. It's a bit on the janky side. It definitely looks janky. The layout is kind of unintuitive. It's pretty par for the course for a lot of Chinese keyboards that I've reviewed, but it's not going to be, once again, not winning any awards for software. It does seem to do what you would want it to do, though. You can remap the keys, like the keybinds. Sadly, it appears you cannot remap the mute or the volume roller there. You can change the backlighting through all those effects that you just saw, as well as per key backlighting options. You can also record macros and bind those. You can also update the software or the firmware. I will say, word of caution, the software did connect to some random server in China when I started it up. Now, that in itself is not especially suspicious, given that, again, it can check for software updates and firmware updates, but it's worth noting I don't have the technical skill to, vet that server connection. But Glasswire did pick it up anyway, so there it is. As is always the case, you use these sorts of keyboard drivers, these software, at your own risk. But anyway, at the least, it seemed functional, if a bit on the janky side. So, a roundabout way of saying I'm glad that there is also per key control in hardware if you choose not to install the software. What other things do we have to talk about? Of course, the wireless functionality. It is currently not plugged in. It is in the 2.4 gigahertz mode. It connected to that very easily. No issues whatsoever. Just plugged it in and it connected right away. Similarly, the Bluetooth mode works great as far as I can tell. You have your choice of a Bluetooth 3 or Bluetooth 5 connection. The Bluetooth 5 connection is what I opted for. The Bluetooth 3 actually might get you more range. I'm not sure about that, and I'm not quite clear on why it gives you the option. Maybe just for backwards compatibility reasons. At any rate, you have 3 slots for Bluetooth devices under the Q, W, and E. To access the Bluetooth mode, you switch it on the back. There's that physical hardware switch we saw earlier. And then you go function Q, W, or E to switch to the device saved in each slot. To enter pairing mode, you hold it down, function Q. It'll start flashing quickly. That means it's in pairing mode. It paired instantly for me, no problems whatsoever. I tested it on both my PC and my phone, so that seems to work just great. One other neat feature that I was going to show you guys is the battery feature. Check it out. See that? That's showing us the battery charge from 1 through 0. That's 10% through 100%. So right now I'm at about 70% charge, say. The battery lasts a long time. I've been using this now for a couple of days. Haven't had it plugged in, so it can easily get you through a day, multiple days. That is with the backlight on in the 2.4 gigahertz wireless mode, which is going to be the most power hungry wireless mode. If you want to save power, turn off the backlight, switch it to Bluetooth. And that's pretty much it. We have a few other minor functions. Function spacebar, hold that down. It'll reset the keyboard. Factory reset. Up here under the function F-row keys, of course, we have various system functions. Play and pause and open the browser and all that stuff. And that's about it. That's kind of the functionality story there. So overall, I would say it has the functionality you want. I would say the backlight is par for the course, maybe slightly above average, just in having a few more effects and looking pretty nice. I like the color rendition on here. Although, mark against it doesn't get super bright, so bear that in mind depending on your environment. Okay, and I touched on the software briefly, which we will not look at here today for the sake of brevity and my sanity. But we are going to listen to this keyboard, so sit back or relax. It's time to see and hear the RK96 in action. All right, so here we are. We've had a chance to look at the RK96 backwards and forwards, top to bottom. We've had a chance to look at the RGB backlighting as well as the wireless functionality. I told you a little bit about the software experience, and of course, most importantly, you got to hear it and see it in action. So now I'm going to share a few of my thoughts on this keyboard and sort of give you my usage impressions. So overall, this was a good keyboard to use. I liked it. It was very functional. The 96% layout is nice, I will say. I did make use of the numpad. Now, of course, because we don't have any nav cluster keys in here or up here, some of those functions are under the numpad, home, and these sorts of things. And I do use those keys a fair bit. And so what I found was that I was pressing numlock a lot to switch between the numpad functionality of the numbers and the secondary functions underneath those numbers. I found that a little bit annoying, but that's the trade-off for having dedicated media functions up here, dedicated media keys, I should say. Depending on how much you use home and page down or page up, that's going to dictate where you fall on that. Perhaps the dedicated controls, media controls, are more important to you. In terms of the feel of this keyboard and the sound, I think it's pretty good. It is a bit different than some boards I've been using recently. It's definitely a clackier keyboard. There's no doubt about that. It's got a pretty sharp sound to it on both the standard keys and the stabilized keys, as you heard, moments ago. And that's neither better nor worse than a softer or thockier sound, but it is a value judgment. So if you prefer a clackier typing experience, a bit of a brighter sound, then perhaps this is the sound signature that you like. If you prefer something softer and thockier or a flexier feeling typing experience, this board probably isn't for you. I don't think you're going to be able to mod it to get much THOCK out of this thing. And of course, it is a very firm typing feel because this is not gasket mounted. There's really not much flex to that plate or to the keyboard in general. Personally, I prefer a bit of a flexier, a little bit of a softer, a little bit of a deeper, thockier typing sound and feel these days. But again, it's all up to personal preference. So I did not dislike typing on this keyboard, and at times it was quite pleasant. The stabilized keys put in a pretty good showing, I would say. Spacebar leaves a bit to be desired, but otherwise they're pretty good. Once again, personally, I like a bit of a softer sound. I would probably, Band-Aid mod them myself, but that's entirely up to personal preference. And overall, they are not rattly. They don't have much in the way of tick. The stabilizers are pretty well attended to. So, and I like the wrist rest. It's not the most, hefty wrist rest I've ever felt, but it certainly gets the job done. The magnetism there is nice, and it's included in the package, so that's a nice bonus. Aesthetically, I think these are really sharp. They're not very adventurous in their aesthetics, but I think they look nice and clean. They would work for a gaming setup or just for an office setup. And I did promise you we would take a look at the Forest Blue colorway, which is an interesting name for a colorway because you would think forest green, maybe. Forests are not especially blue generally, but anyway, here it is. So you can see it's a nice colorway as well. Between the two of them, Hard to say. I think I might actually like the forest blue a little bit more, but that's just me. We've got this kind of deeper, almost navy blue here, and then this light, like gray blue. We got white legends, and then we've got this, I think it's a very pale yellow for the accents. And yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Hopefully you can see that okay. And it does, of course, come with a color-matched wrist rest. Let me just pull that over here. Ta-da! Just like so. Yeah, fairly sharp-looking boards. The double-shot keycaps are nice, too. Not the thickest double-shot caps I have ever experienced, but certainly a cut above your average keycaps on sort of a more budget-oriented board. So, where does that leave us? Overall, it's a pretty solid package, but, and this is going to sound a bit like a diss, it's not meant to be a diss, but it feels kind of like a budget keyboard manufacturer trying to make something more premium, and rather than a more, bespoke or enthusiast-oriented keyboard manufacturer making something from scratch. However, that only becomes a diss at the wrong price point. And I do think that the $163 asking price for this special edition RK96, that is the MSRP, that's too much. I think that there are very strong options in that price category, some of which I've looked at here on this channel this year. The Halo 96 from NuFi, for example. At that price point, it outcompetes this thing in most ways. However, as they say, no bad products, only bad price points. That's not entirely true, but that does apply here. This isn't a bad product. It's just that 165 is too much to ask for it. I noticed as I was wrapping this up, there is a Father's Day sale going on. The RK96 Special Edition is on for about $120, I think. And then you can get an extra 10% off using the sign up for the newsletter, or possibly a code down in the video description. Not sure about that yet, but as I said earlier, check it out. Maybe there's something to save you a bit of money down there. At any rate, using some combination of discounts, it seems like this board usually goes for around 110. That seems to be kind of typical. And at that price point, yeah, I think that's more reasonable. I would maybe even like to see it down to like the $99 price point, but 110, I think that what's on offer here is reasonable. I think that's reasonable value. And for what it's worth, the RK96 does have a handful of features that do help it stand out against some competitors. For example, we have dedicated media keys, or the volume control, and the mute button. It's a shame that the mute button can only mute, can't be rebound, but perhaps those dedicated controls are really important to you. It also has the USB hub, which for whatever reason, many other keyboards decide to not include. But we've got a pair of USB 2 ports here, which could be really useful to you. Lots of people like that extra functionality. And finally, it has the included wrist rest. Once again, not the heftiest or most solid feeling wrist rest I've ever used, but it certainly gets the job done, and it looks pretty decent while doing it. If you were to buy the Halo 96 from NuFi, for example, you'd have to buy the wrist rest separately for another $30 or so, although that one is much fancier, but nonetheless, the price inflates. So for sort of functional parity, with that board, you'd be looking at something closer to $200, which makes the $110 price point here seem a bit more reasonable. by comparison. Oh, that's something you might not have seen previously during the RGB segment, but the backlight does turn off after inactivity for a little while, but it turns back on as soon as you press a key. That's pretty standard battery saving feature. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave us? I think the RK96 is a fine board. I don't think it's a terribly exciting board, but I think it's a fine board that aesthetically, functionally, straddles that sort of everyday use and gamery line. I think it's applicable to a wide range of use cases, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think that this layout is going to appeal to a lot of people who want something a bit more compact than a full size, but aren't willing or ready yet to give up their numpad. I think it's a pretty complete package with a wrist rest, the USB hub, and all that. And I think it sounds and feels pretty good, especially if you're in the market for a clackier keyboard rather than a softer, thockier sound, because you're not going to get the latter out of this. And critically, I think this all makes sense around that $100, $110 price point. It makes a lot less sense at the supposed MSRP, but we see this all the time with keyboard manufacturers. They say that the MSRP is, something high, and then it's always on sale. It's supposed to make you feel like you're getting a better deal. In this case, I would say you're only getting a deal if you get it at that discount price. I would not consider it a strong option at its MSRP, but again, that discount pretty much always seems to be on. So, and that's that. That is the story of the RK96. I think Royal Kludge has made a solid attempt at a more enthusiast-oriented keyboard here. There are other features I might like to see, but they would probably increase the price. So I think at that discounted price point with the feature set that this board packs, it's a solid option. So if you'd like to check it out, there are, of course, links down below in the video description for both the Camp Green variant and the Forest Blue variant colorway here. And there might be some kind of discount there too, some kind of code. But if not, you can always, as I said, sign up for their newsletter and get, I think, 10% off your first purchase. A big thank you to Royal Kludge RK for sponsoring this video, for sending over the product samples that you see here, and supporting this channel in doing so. I appreciate it very much. And a big thank you to all of you for watching. I hope you found this informative. I hope you found this relaxing. And I look very forward to having you back here next time. Farewell for now, my friends. It's the end of the video, and you know what that means, probably, maybe, if you ever make it to the end of my videos. It means it's time for the special thanks, where I thank our kind channel supporters on YouTube memberships and Patreon. You can see their esteemed names right here. These individuals help support the content that I create here, help support me as an individual, and give me some freedom from sponsorships, from the uncertainties of YouTube ad revenue, that sort of thing, to allow me to keep making the kind of content that I enjoy the most and that you hopefully enjoy watching. At each tier, there are different fun perks. All of them get their names here, of course, and all supporters get early access to my weekend videos every week. At the Fusaro tier, you also gain access to a special poll every month to decide on the topic of a video once a month. And that one's going to be coming up here on the channel pretty soon. And finally, at the Fusroda tier, the supporters get their names read out, a special spoken shout out in each and every video. And that is what you are about to hear right now. Starting with James C., Dragoon 88, Ragnar Ragnarsson, jumping over to Drummer Brit, Rango Steele, K Time, Jake Luffney, and Angel Garcia. What a fantastic group of folks. It really does help me. These supporters, their support means a lot. So a big, big thank you to those kind individuals and all of the supporters that you see here. Of course, if you, dear viewer or listener, are not a supporter but would like to be one, well, there are links down in the video description to both my Patreon and my YouTube memberships where you can browse the tiers and find one that is right for you. Once again, a huge, huge thank you to all our wonderful supporters.